Welcome to Movie Time Machine, where each week we take movies from the past and relive them in the present. This week we travel back to the year 1977 and revisit the original Star Wars: A New Hope. Directed and written by George Lucas, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Sir Alec Guinness. This is your Time Machine host, Chad, and let's meet my co-host today.
Hey, I'm James. Currently I'm watching Jack Ryan on Amazon, and that's kind of the only thing I'm kind of into right now. Chad, what are you enjoying?
Right now I'm still enjoying Ozark. Jumped into season 2, and I watched the first 2 episodes of the Star Wars live action show, The Mandalorian, and which
how are you liking that?
I'm really digging it. I wish I could just binge it, because it's just like it's just getting released on a weekly basis, so I just wish I could just sit and binge it. So I'm just really anxious to see what's gonna drop next Friday. So really
I think a lot of my coworkers have definitely sold me on the Disney Plus, but then I believe one of our other co-hosts, Jamie, had informed me that if you have Verizon, you can probably get on that bandwagon for a year. So I'm gonna look into that today.
Yeah, I think if you get the unlimited plan, you get it free for a year. So
nice.
All right. Brought to you by Verizon. All right, before we go into our Star Wars discussion, I just want to inform our listeners to let you know that new episodes drop every Friday on most of your podcasting platforms, and please remember to share, like, and subscribe. If you like the show, please leave us a short review on Apple Podcasts and give us that 5-star rating, because that's the only one that counts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Movie Machine Pod, or just do a search for Movie Time Machine and find us there. Please send your questions or comments so we can read them on the show. And just to give you some homework for our next 2 episodes, we will be reviewing The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi to lead up to the release of The Rise of Skywalker. Now, on to the show. We're going to tell you what the movie's about. We're going to go over some box office numbers. We'll do a quick review of the film. Then we're going to go over some questions that we have on the film. And we're going to end with our top 5 list of our non-main Star Wars characters in the film. So, James, if you want to give us a quick synopsis.
Yeah, no problem. So Star Wars: A New Hope. The Imperial forces, under the orders of the cruel Darth Vader, hold Princess Leia hostage in their efforts to quell the rebellion against the Galactic Empire. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, captain of the Millennium Falcon, work together with the companionable droid duo R2-D2 and C-3PO to rescue the beautiful princess, help the Rebellion Alliance, and restore freedom and justice to the galaxy. I think that synopsis is a little funny because it's pretty much just the rundown when you start the movie.
Yeah,
it sounds
right,
like
right. The opening crawl.
Yeah, it's like, so if you didn't know, you just press play and you'll be good to go. So with the box office, actually, I was surprised to look at that the budget was $11 million. I was thinking that in 1977, that seems like a lot for somebody to give to a movie in that time. But maybe not, because I don't know. I was just trying to think of some other bigger films that probably ended up taking a lot more time to film than this movie, that probably cost more. But yeah, opening weekend, I think they just had about $1,555,000. But total U.S. gross altogether ended up being about $461 million. So definitely great return on investment there. Worldwide ended up being $775 million or so. What I thought was interesting, initial release it was in just 32 theaters for the first 18 months, grossing $307 million. That's incredible. That is people dedicated to going to see this multiple times, which probably the theaters had never seen at that point.
Yeah, I think this was a huge moment too. Like when you look at the box office numbers, like Star Wars continued. I mean, it was on that initial 18-month run. It was still bringing in tons of money in that second year as well, whereas it made an additional $33 million, which is
I was gonna say they closed its release after, I think it was 14 months, and then ended up reopening it the next day.
Yeah.
And keeping it open for another 4 months. Well, and then that's what's crazy, is keeping it open for just an additional 4 months, making another $34 million.
Right. Yeah,
that's insane.
It's crazy. That's crazy. I wish I kind of had an actual time machine to go back and just kind of be around to see what that buzz was like to kind of experience that for the
Well, for
first
sure,
time.
because that means like I like the way I just kind of have to view it in my head is it's people that were near theaters, because if it was just 32 theaters, like people had to drive probably a couple hours just to go see a movie that they were just hearing from word of mouth, and like which also what does that even look like in 1977?
Right.
Because
Right.
there's no social media. Like I'm like, how are people hearing about all this unless it's just
Yeah,
it
it's just like
happens to be on the
word of mouth and radio, and probably the news
radio?
you got
Like the
from your like
news
three,
probably was insane.
yeah, your three like main like network, you know, channels like
Yeah.
your CBS, ABC, NBC. That was it. So yeah, it's pretty
Exactly.
interesting.
It had to be somebody on the phone just all of a sudden, like somebody's cousin from California was like, they saw it. They said it was the best thing they'd ever seen in their
Right.
lives. And then like all of a
Right.
sudden, big group of kids are like, we got to go, figure out how to get on a train or a bus to go see it. So no, that's really cool. I'd be interested to dive into what box office stuff looked like for a couple more films back then, but that had to be one of the first of its time to start making like multi-million-dollar. I mean, even looking at the date of coming out on the May 25th, like the start of the movie season as we know it now, is
Yeah.
this kind of what depicted that whole summer movie box
Right.
office, or
Right.
even the term blockbuster
Right.
kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that was because I was looking at movies that came out that year too. So like number 2 was Smokey and the Bandit, which pulled in 126 million gross, and third was Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Okay, there you go.
So it's a good year for sci-fi.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that was probably I mean, yeah, there you go with Close Encounters with between Lucas and Spielberg. That was like the beginning of starting this whole new regime of like really, really good special effects and like just what they could do together to make things look really good. So yeah, that's just pretty impressive.
All right. Thanks for going over those numbers. So it's just you and I, James. So I just wanted to not really. I guess it's kind of obvious that I think we both like this film. So why don't we just do like a quick review, like why you like the Star Wars, or just your feelings about A New Hope?
Well, my first initial feelings with A New Hope, it locks you in. I mean, obviously locks you in from the beginning with just the synopsis in the beginning. I've never really seen a movie like that, and then just moving into from space into like all the laser shooting and all that, it just kind of grasps your attention, especially as a child watching this. But for me, the biggest thing, and it still holds true to this day, is just the movie score, like the John Williams score that is throughout the whole film. It tells so many different stories where I'm really curious to know how I'd feel about this movie if it didn't have such a strong musical background. I mean,
Yep,
he's depicting. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. No, I didn't mean to jump in, but yeah, that was, that's the question I had, like, we were watching this film and trying to, like, think about it a little bit more deeply beyond, like, just, like, the, my experience with the past. But, yeah, like, I was, like, thinking to myself, what would this movie be like with a different score? Like, would I like it as much? Because, like, I was really paying attention to the score because I was listening to it with headphones, and I was like, man, like this score is like moving through like each part of the film. It's just like connecting it. And one thing I noticed about like the sound, not to get ahead of myself, but I want to talk about the sound design too, was that even like in the parts where the score isn't present, like it's not really like quiet. There's always like little like bleeps, and like there's something in the background that's always there to like, so like the scene isn't dry, like especially like in the Death Star scenes, there's always like some kind of like blips and beeps in the background, or like there's always some kind of ambient noise there to
Yeah, for
fill
sure.
those like. But anyway, carry on your experience with Star Wars.
So no, I mean that was my first little initial thought when I was rewatching this, was just that the movie score goes throughout, and I remembered that I did at one point, and I actually found them. I still own them. Purchased the CDs when they re-released everything for Star Wars again, when they remastered it on VHS and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they did re-release like the full movie scores onto CDs, and I actually still own them. And that was like one of the first times I think I was listening to them and thinking, wow, just to your point, there is music almost entirely throughout this whole movie. Like it's like they scored an entire movie. It's not just two themes that repeat itself throughout
Right.
like the entire movie, which most movies seem to be.
Right.
This has multiple themes. Like as soon as like even you see in the first like 15 to 20 minutes of T3PO and R2D2, I mean, you just have themes of friendship. You have Luke and him looking off into the distance at Tatooine. You got themes of like fear and wonder, and then later you got themes of betrayal. Like, just there's so many different musical cues that play throughout this entire film that just it really just builds your emotion to how you're feeling about each character, which is so smart because why would I care about two droids, one that doesn't talk,
Right.
and then the other one that talks too much and like for ultimately should be annoying, right?
Right.
But you care about these two guys because the score really depicted that they have a really strong friendship, and it's just and why would I feel that between the blender and the ice maker? It's just really weird. So, but that was. I know bad analogies for those two. I just was thinking, but just two arbitrary machines that I really shouldn't care a lot about is kind of what I was trying to get at with that. But yeah, so initial thoughts for me was just the score. Cinematography was second. It reminded me a lot of Lawrence of Arabia, just a very strong film presence that still over time holds up to me and is still like I can't remember what number that is in like AFI Top 100 or whatnot, but I know Lawrence of Arabia was really strong influence on Spielberg. After watching the Spielberg documentary, he was saying how that was a movie he went to go see and saw like easily 100 times while it was in its like release, which I thought was, I mean, it's a long movie, so that's incredible, but just something where he saw something so visual that really just grasped him. So I'm just wondering if Lucas had, if that was something that he would like liked as well, and it just kind of took from that. I don't know. And then lastly, I guess for me, with the R2D2, since I was talking about it, I was just wondering, like, is he the original, like, Gromit from, like, Wallace and Gromit? Like, he only makes a couple sounds or, like, he has no facial expressions. But all of this, like, I think at this point from seeing the movies, like, full on, we know what those beeps semi mean when R2D2 is nervous about something.
Right.
Like, why? Yep, exactly. So we can whistle those tones, and
You're right.
like if we were in a group setting, we would probably know like, yep, I agree.
Right. Right.
which is just kind of funny and genius, like when it comes to it. But those were my first initial takeaways with watching it again. Not to get too busy into the story, but just looking at just everything else that was going on in the background and why it held my attention for so long, and until now even. It's not something where I'm like, I don't want to watch it. I put it on and was thinking I hadn't seen this in some time, and after the first like 2 minutes of everything going on, I was like, yep, I'm sitting down and I'll finish this all today.
Right. Just really quick, when you talk about like the influences on George Lucas, I know that one of his biggest influences for this movie was it I can't remember the director's name now. It was like Kurosawa, that directed the movie Yojimbo, which is like a samurai film.
I was gonna say the Kurosawa. Yeah, the name sounds familiar.
So that was like a big influence on him. Then like just old like World War II movies, I think he used for a lot of like the dog fighting, like especially like when it comes to like the Death Star, Trench Run, like just how like the X-Wings and the TIE fighters like are going in for the attack. I think he used a lot of like old World War II footage for that. But I think his big influence was the Yojimbo film. I think it's been like the film like, hey, you should go back and watch this to see where George Lucas got a lot of his influence for the cinematography in Star Wars. So, but I don't know. I've just been told that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one of those. I'll have to go back and look for myself.
Right. So cool. Yeah, I kind of just want to echo a lot of the same things that you just said. Just sitting down, every time I go back and watch A New Hope, going in, I'm always like, this isn't really my favorite of the original trilogy movies, but once I sit down and like the story gets going, I'm just like, man, I always forget how much I like this film, like going back to it and just how it just sets up the original trilogy. And I'm just always kind of amazed that how it has held up. And why don't we just move into that part of the conversation, actually, because I know I've had friends and even somebody that's a part of the movie Time Machine group has said that, like, Star Wars, they can't get into it. It seems old and seems dated. But for the most part, I think this film really holds up, except for maybe like the scenes that they added as part of the special edition. So like the CGI scenes that they add that were from like 1996 or 97. Like going back and seeing those now, they don't look as great. They really stick out.
Yeah, I'd agree with. So watching it this round, I can't remember when the last time I watched A New Hope was, and I'm actually willing to guess it was probably on VHS before I know I saw it in the theaters when they re-released it with this new footage, but like the VHS copies, like the originals before they added the CG, that's like what's in my memory. So even watching my copies that I own, I don't know if I've actually watched it in my own home. And then I was very caught off guard by that. Like, oh, that's right. The stormtroopers riding that whatever you would call it. And I was like, that definitely threw me off. Yeah, sorry, dewback. That'll be fun when we get to our favorite characters, trying to see if I'm pronouncing any of these guys right.
Right. I can't wait for that.
But I know, so that our buddy that has a tough time with these movies because he says they're dated, and he couldn't even make it through. I don't even think he made it through Empire. I think he just watched A New Hope and then just called it quits. It throws me off that he thinks that it looks dated. Sure, the movie looks old as any movie in the 70s or early 80s would look, but it's bothersome to me that if he is like depicting this strictly on special effects or whatnot, or maybe it is that he just can't get behind the storyline. But from everything we were talking about in the beginning, there's so much going on with good movie making that I feel like he should be able to get past that point pretty quickly into the viewing. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just, again, from my memory, like going back to this, one of the reasons why I always think I don't like New Hope as much, because I feel like it obviously does look the oldest out of the Star Wars films, but man, it looks pretty good. Even like the practical effects, I think, really hold up, and those are probably the ones that hold up the most over time. And I know that when they did like before they did the special editions, they did like a remastered version where they like there used to be like a lot of blocking around like the ships in the film, and they cleaned that up. And even if they would have kept those practical effects, like they still really looked good. Like those would still hold up over time. I guess for me, the only thing that doesn't hold up as well is like the hairstyles. I mean, it's obviously looks like the era of like the late 70s. As far as like scenes go, I think most of the movie holds up, except for like the trench run, like when they're going to attack the Death Star. Like it just seems weird that it just seems so kind of empty. Like there's just like a couple like TIE fighters and X-Wings and like the battle, and you think, man, there's like this giant space station. There's got to be like all those ships, and I know like technically like they probably didn't have the technology to do that or add that in, but
yeah,
I feel like that's the only. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know whenever I've seen any like behind the scenes of like A New Hope when they're doing all the spaceship and Death Star scenes and kind of going over it for the era, like it does seem just incredible that like as they had to create all these new special effects and new technologies to make this happen is probably why it did cost so much. So that's where you're right. Like those scenes, they don't hold up as well to what we're known for viewing right now. But for the time, it's incredible what they did, because with that, it opened up all these resources for the next films, which to your point, like that's why this one probably looks the oldest and not as clean. So
right, because I think when you kind of compare this film to like Empire looks really good. I think if we talk about that one in the future, like for over A New Hope, like I think it's just amazing, like the steps that they took going into that film 3 years later versus A New Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like they had the time. They probably had more money and more resources to them after this movie did so well. And then, being able to just clean it up and actually know how to do a lot of the stuff. Like, I'm gonna be like, all right, well, this is how we're gonna make a spaceship fly and make it look realistic in space with stars and everything else. Like they didn't have to do several trials before before being able to film. Like they're like, yep, we got this. We'll just use the background we did in the last one. So, but yeah, a lot of even like the space, even the space scenes and just like the glows around planets. Like it's just really incredible what they could do. Because I mean, I know they had clearly a lot more resources, but you really feel like when you're a kid in the 90s with your own like VHS video camera, like you might be able to make something similar somehow. Cause like, you're like, well, how did they do this? Like there was no computers really helping me out in the 70s. So like, like how can I make these films? So I don't know. It's just really cool. And it just got everybody's, for me personally, it just got my love for Star Wars started clearly. And then it just became, I think for movies in general, just epic movies like that are just like bigger than life, and just made everything just so much fun.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing up like the technology that they had to create for that film, because it made me think of watching The Mandalorian. I was looking at some behind the scenes stuff and what they actually did they wanted to create some more practical effects for the series and not have it be completely digital for the special effects. Is the crew rebuilt some of the same like the cameras on like the rails and rollers that they use for the original Star Wars trilogy, and like making like the models and stuff like that and incorporated into the Mandalorian. So just the idea of like how that technology over 42 years now is still being used today. So
yeah, that's cool. Well, and then even like, so like even going beyond technology, if you just even go, let's say art and costume design with it, like even just the cantina scene with how many different made up characters are involved in that, how many different costumes were made. And I think that was like a big criticism when we started making, episodes 1, 2, and 3, or where, they were all just CGI characters. And I think that took away. I think people were getting frustrated with it. I don't even want to know if the realism is the right way to put it, because clearly these puppeteers and Jim Henson-esque aliens weren't real, but it fit for what we had seen or what we had known, and then just adding these real fluid CGI characters, it almost took away from the movies. That's why I appreciate like Guillermo del Toro, like with Pan's Labyrinth and other movies that he's made, or even like the Hellboy films. He's done, I feel like, a good combination of let's keep something CG, but then let's really bring the makeup artists back in different scenes. It just, I don't know, I think it just plays better. So the fact that you're saying Mandalorian is kind of, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but bringing it back to the feel of how we all knew and loved Star Wars films, especially for such a new series to kick off a new generation of Star Wars ideas. Like, it's just really cool.
Yeah, I just think there's like a lack of depth in like what you're seeing, and like reference to like what's real and what's not when you put too much CGI into a film. Like when it's a lot of CGI, just, I don't know, there's something that just looks like, just doesn't look lived in, or it's like too crisp, or that's a conversation we can go, or a completely different conversation about like CGI versus practical effects.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll write that down for a future.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, some other things too I just wanted to touch on quick that didn't age well was so I talked about the trench run, the hairstyles, and just like the added special edition scenes. That's all I really have. Did you have any other ones?
No, I think those were. I think you nailed it. Like, I even forgot about hair. I think I was thinking it the whole time I was watching it. I just didn't like make a note of it. Right. I guess the only other thing would just be for me, some of the costumes. I think it just seemed like, even like they must have spent so much money on the special effects and other puppeteering situations that the clothes that they generally wore, like it just seemed like they really phoned that part in. But I guess building all these new technologies, that's what clearly cost the most to make this work, and that's not what they were necessarily worried about. So I think you kind of hit it on the head with all that.
All right, before we go into our list of non-main characters in the film, I just want to touch too quick. I watched this on the new Disney Plus streaming service. Yeah. And one of my biggest surprises when I first started watching it, it was that it's now in 4K HDR, and it's like the best I've. This has got to be the definitive way to watch Star Wars now. It's the best that I've ever seen it. It was just so crisp, and like you could see like the details in like the Darth Vader mask. Like it's obvious like how kind of patched together, like some of like the costumes were versus like when you watched it in like even Empire and Return of the Jedi, like the mask becomes like it's a lot shinier.
Oh,
each iteration, but you could definitely see like some paint marks and so. But
that's actually okay. So that's funny that you mentioned it like that. So I was going to ask you if you're seeing it in 4K, like they're updating these older movies like this that weren't meant for 4K. I was just going to ask, like, how much detail can you see, and does it take away from certain things? Like I always try to think like when 4K was first coming out, and like I feel like Lord of the Rings might have been one of the first 4K movies that I remember hearing about, and they're like, oh great, now we need to make sure the trash is real and not CGI because someone's going to notice. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So it's just one of those where I'm like, oh, so you saying that you're watching this movie on 4K? That's I like that you're saying it's a definitive way to watch it, but I'm like, how do they clean up movies like this? Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just guessing here, but it's almost like it almost gave like a feeling of like you're actually like watching it in a theater. Can't really describe it, but it's almost you can kind of see the film grain too. That it's so crisp, but it did not take away from like the experience at all.
That's good.
Yeah, because since I downloaded the app, I downloaded the movie on my phone, so I was like watching it like different scenes like multiple times, just looking at the details of some of the scenes. But yeah, definitely if you have a 4K TV and like Star Wars, I mean Disney Plus is where it's at.
Copy that.
What else? Oh, another cool thing too is they have like there's extras too on there, so they have like deleted scenes from the films and stuff like that, which is I kind of think a cool added bonus for a streaming service. I don't think you really get that with, like, say, a Netflix.
No, certainly not. That is something I think that is missing because, especially with some things on, it seems like everything's so easily accessible. Like since you're not getting like the DVD, Blu-ray, everybody's just streaming stuff anymore. That's like one thing that came with almost every disc, or was a small feature, even if it was just the special feature was a theatrical trailer. But a lot of movies like this, where they did a lot behind the scenes, where people like us are actually really curious about like how they did a lot of things. Yeah. That's something we're starting to lose. So that's really cool that they've brought that aspect back. That I like that.
Yeah. Now the next thing I want to see is like a director commentary audio option.
Oh god,
for streaming. Yeah. I occasionally I occasionally like to listen to that once in a while for a hard disc copy of the film.
Yeah, definitely. After you watch a movie like this so many times, like you're like, where do we go from here? And then you just learn like other cool little tidbits. But
yes.
it is cool though. Like with Disney Plus being so new and doing what they're doing, it's just crazy to me that a movie like A New Hope, there's still stuff out there that people haven't potentially seen. Like that's just incredible when it comes to movies, like how much they're keeping in their like, well, now Disney Vault.
Right. I know. It's nuts. Okay, let's move on to our character list. So we went through and we chose our top 5 characters that are not main characters. So no Skywalkers or Kenobis or Solos or Yoda or Chewies or droids. But do you want to just go back and forth? We'll start at the bottom of our list and we'll just work our way to the top.
I'm with you. Let's start with the bottom and work our way to the top. Because I think actually going through these and like, not besides either through the action figures collecting growing up or or actually having to look up these names, I'm like, oh, well, I can describe who I'm talking about, but I don't know if I know these names, so this will be fun to go through.
Nice.
But yeah, we can just go from the bottom up. I'm sure with people that aren't the main characters, we have very similar lists, I bet.
Right. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and go first.
Go for it.
My number 5 is the look, sir, droids stormtrooper, which that's it just cracks me up. Like it just kind of pops up with like the whatever is supposed to be a droid part. I don't know.
I like it. They just see the tracks of the droids. But I agree. Like I bet like that guy. Like I haven't been to like a Star Wars convention or anything like that, but I have to think that actor like is known in the Star Wars community, where like he shows up to those things and everybody is just so excited to see this person. Like that's how I feel. But I'm with you. It's a very well known scene to anybody watching A New Hope and liking these movies for as long as we have. That's for sure. For me, for 5, I'll just go a classic of just the Jawas. It's like they're just these. You don't like see their faces. It's just like they're like almost wearing Kenobi cloaks. Like that's where he was like masking what he was going to wear in the desert. But just these little guys running around and like the noises that they made. Again, it's another one of those films or parts of the film where it's an alien just making noises and you're like kind of getting the idea of like what they're doing, if they're happy, if they're sad. Like I don't know. So. But just these little scavenger guys, and I don't know. It's just kind of fun. Just something new that you, at the time, like really hadn't seen in a movie before.
Right, and again to talk about like how awesome the score is to the film. It's like when you hear like the Jawa theme, like that, you get the scenes like it just automatically pops in your head. It's just so notable when.
Very, very vivid every time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, my number 4, are the Jawas, and
okay.
I was actually there was a really cool Jawa scene in the second episode of The Mandalorian, which is really awesome. But I was starting to think, I was like, did they like mimic the Minions characters after Jawas? Because like they sound an awful lot. They sound a lot like Jawas.
I was just thinking of the eyes, like okay, under the cloaks, like that's what's going on. And then until you made the note about the sounds right there, I'm like, dang it, you're right. Minions do sound like Jawas. Exactly. No, that's great.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I don't know.
Like Minions aren't part of the Disney universe, are they? Minions are like, I think they're their own thing. Like,
is it like DreamWorks?
So I think they're Sony or DreamWorks Sony? Or something. So because man, I think you nailed it. Like that would have been a cool, fun little crossover that nobody saw coming.
Jawas versus Minions.
God, coming this holiday season.
Right.
I love it. So the number 4 for me, I had to look up this dude's name, Dr. Ivazan. I don't know, but it's the guy at the cantina where Luke's just trying to get a drink or whatnot, and he was just telling him to back off because his buddy doesn't like him or whatever. And he's like, I'm a wanted man, and I'm like, and so actually looking up this guy's name thing, I'm like, wait, so this guy was like casted as Doctor this, like I bet he was shocked as shit when like they're like, we're gonna put this mask on you. Here's your lines. But
my friend doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
It's just a very memorable scene. Not even for like a scene, a lightsaber do some damage for the first time. Like that's not even like the part that like really called out to me when I was watching it. I was just the whole interaction. I was just kind of laughing about it.
No blasters. All right. My number 3 is. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna switch this up because I think my number 3 is probably my number 2. But my number 3 is I maybe cheated a little bit. I put Ponda Baba and Dr. Ezvacan, whatever.
Got it.
I don't even. I'm even butchering it. But yeah, so for same reasons that entire scene is kind of like. That's a scene that I could watch and I could just like say all the lines as I'm watching it.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah.
So Ponda Baba, is that what you said? Is that other?
He's the walrus man.
The walrus guy?
Yeah.
I know. That's awesome. Like that whole scene, like, again, I mentioned it earlier with just all the characters in the cantina, but like, it's just so cool to go around the room. And it's just funny that at this point in time, like even the littlest of characters you see in a corner have an action figure and a name and a title. Like, whose job was it for that? Like that's
I know. God, the marketing.
So
selling toys.
So smart. I guess that's something we didn't bring up with A New Hope. I know with the toys that made us on Netflix or whatnot, they had
Yeah.
a whole Star Wars thing, which was cool. But like who got the rights and like who's making these toys, I'd be interested to see like what the marketing aspect of this, like how much of maybe the worldwide gross. I'm assuming when we were giving numbers, it was strictly for the movie itself, not for marketing or like what that looked like. But God, that had been insane too.
Right. Yeah, what was that next? It was the toys that made us on Netflix.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
called?
on Netflix,
That
and it
was
was
really good.
Yeah, so and a new season actually just came out. I saw the other day on the picture. I saw Ninja Turtles on there, so I'll have to see what else
gotta check
what
that
else we
out.
got going on.
Right. Yeah, the Transformers one was really interesting too.
Oh, that one was really good. He-Man was really good.
He-Man, yeah.
Like where they're like, we're going out of business. Let's paint this line green. Yay!
Right.
Just like it's just crazy. Like how that those little things all of a sudden influence pop culture in such a huge way. Like it's just crazy to me.
Right now.
I think if I'm on 3, I was just gonna say the Tusken Raiders. Again,
good call. Yeah.
just their I mean, I don't want to say they don't do a lot, but like just their scenes with and like how fearful Luke is of them, or not necessarily fearful, but just hey, these guys are dangerous. We gotta stay away from these guys. And like again, just the noises they make. It's just very. Like if I heard the scream or call out, like I would know, like, oh, yep, that's
right,
a Tusken Raider for Star Wars. Right. So I don't know, just another cool part of the scene. I think on Tatooine that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, another the score again for like the Tusken Raiders scene is just awesome. It's just kind of quiet, and it's like the drum that kind of kicks in, like do 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 do.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, you nailed it. Like with the score, like seriously, like everybody has their own little miniature themes, and I think that's just the score is what it really drives the movie for me, and that's why it's hard for me for listening to one of our peers talk and not want to see any of these movies, especially like with that. Because it's like, how are you not getting on board just by listening? Like everything has an emotional cue. So I don't know, kind of weird for me, but yeah, Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, speaking of Tusken Raiders, quick, as we're talking about Tusken Raiders and Jawas on our list, I just had this thought, preparing for this podcast is like, what does a Jawa look like under the hood? What does a Tusken Raider look like under the mask? And I Googled it. Apparently, there isn't an answer to that. So,
I was gonna say, you had me I was listening so intently, and I'm like,
it's like a guy with like a '70s coif and like a big mustache. All right, my number 2. What's that?
I was just thinking, the real answer is like most Jawas were the same guy playing R2-D2.
Right.
I'm like, oh, it's just sad.
The guy that was Willow?
Willow, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. All right, my number 2 is Greedo. Just that whole scene with like the controversial scene with Greedo and Han that's been changed multiple times, and which in the Disney Plus version has been altered again.
No way. How so?
I don't remember what the last alteration was before this, but they both shoot at the same time. And right before, so like Han says, like, I bet you have, and like fires, but they cut in a scene right before that where Greedo says like McClunky.
Okay.
So that has all of a sudden been like a meme now for like the last week. Is McClunky, but
that's weird. So is this where like the whole like I was gonna ask you because I figured you would know. Because I didn't look it up, but okay. So Greedo was my number 2 as well, and then I made a note going. So who did shoot first? Like what? Like it's been an ongoing little comment that always happens in even other pop culture references.
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, that was a worse idea than Greedo shooting first. So like, am I missing something where in the older versions Greedo shot first, and then DVD copies all of a sudden Han shot first, and now you're saying they both shoot at the same time?
Yeah. So Han shot first in the original. Then when they did the special editions, they had Greedo shoot first. Then like they digitally altered like Han's like ducking the shot and then shooting Greedo. because like George Lucas didn't want to make it look like Han Solo was just like murdering Greedo. I don't know.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, but I don't know. Then it was altered again multiple times. I don't know. I don't remember the full details. I just gave up on it. And so like
it's like I'm sure that's like a whole Family Guy thing where they like the whole episode of Family Guy is them shooting. It's got to be like in that Blue Harvest, which I don't remember, but like it's insane.
I'll have to go back and watch that now. All right. So Greedo
brings it down to our number ones.
All right, number one. I feel like my number one now. I'm getting a little serious here, but my number one is Grand Moff Tarkin. I can't remember the actor now off the top of my head that played that role, but just in this latest rewatching of A New Hope, I'm like, he's like a really vicious like character. He's like, is trying to get the location of the rebel base from Princess Leia, and she like lies to him, and because like they're going to threaten to destroy her home world, and she tells him, he's just like, okay, blow it up anyway. Go ahead. Like fuck you. Like I know you're lying, but I'm just going to destroy your home planet right in front of you. Just I don't know. I just love that character, and he has some pretty good lines from the film too. But
yeah, he's pretty brutal. Actually, after watching this one, I was just looking at his cheekbones and indents. Like I'm like, man, this is I don't know how much makeup this is, but this guy's even got like a wicked evil looking face.
Right.
And I did appreciate what was it, Rogue One, where they brought a likeness actor back for him that like also depicted that face for certain Death Squad scenes like that. So like no, I agree. He's definitely this vicious guy, and also like who's running him, because Vader really listens to him and his guidance. So clearly, like something's going on there that I don't remember, or I'm not aware of, or we're not aware of yet. Like, why is Vader listening to this guy and then running everybody else? Like, it's his job. Like, I don't know.
Right.
For me, so mine was, and I had to look up this dude's name too. General Taggy, I think. Anyways, like so he's the first guy that stood up to Vader. He's the one that was like, hey, whatever, Lord Vader, no one listens to your sorcery ways. And then he starts, it's the dude that's getting choked out. So for me, it's the dude getting choked out by Vader in the beginning before Grand Moff Tarkin was like, Vader, release him. But like for me, I'm just thinking to myself, like, this guy after this scene, like, went back to his barracks and went out to the bar and had a drink with other generals that night and was like, did you hear what I said to Vader? That pussy. Just like like Vader, like, he can't hear me now, and he's just like, he better run away.
Right.
But I just thought it's funny, like, this guy, assumingly all these guys know or have heard rumors of Vader's, like, what he can and cannot do with his power, or just in general, like his role, and even just being this dark looking guy that, like, why would you stand up to somebody that looks like that? And then he's just telling him what to do. I thought, I was like, man, that's a brave soul right there, or he lost a bet. But just always a scene that stands out to me.
I know. Imagine what the diversity and inclusion meeting looks like on the Death Star. Or
oh my God,
workplace violence.
Oh my God, no kidding. Like, I was gonna say active shooter training. Like, right. It was like, what do we do when a rebel shows up? Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's like these, like, almost like on YouTube you could look them up, but like Disney had like these Nazi propaganda films, but like hey, how do you like know what a Nazi looks like? And like it's like this like big like huge lady with like blonde hair and like a Vikings hat on or something like that. It's like, this is supposed to be like this is what a German looks like, and how do you create a Nazi? Like, I'm just thinking of like, how do you create a rebel? Well, what they did is this. Just saying, like, the Empire is like, hey, you're on the right side of this fight. Right. So, I don't know. But
they kind of have a shot like that in the background of Solo, like a propaganda film for the Empire. That's kind of like that.
You're not, now that you say that, I do remember that, like, a little bit. God, I'll have to rewatch Solo now too. Solo was a fun one, just because it really goes off of all of this New Hope of the movie we were talking about, where you're like, okay, so there's so many different things that need to happen in Solo before it came out. You're like, okay, so we're gonna like Han's gotta shoot somebody first, like before somebody else attacks him, like because that's part of like this ongoing joke.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck is what's a Kessel Run? Like,
Right.
what does that look like? And so there was just all these little like things from Han that you're like, okay, he always talks about this stuff, and so we need to figure out like there's got to be all these depictive scenes in Solo, which was just really fun to watch unroll.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's a movie they got judged maybe too critically. I got kind of left out and maybe have ruined like a possibility of like a great, maybe not great trilogy, but a good Star Wars trilogy, because I think they had the guy that played Solo signed up for 2 more films, and like the way that movie ended, like it seemed like it was kind of like leaving it open for them to do some sort of trilogy with that. But
yeah, I'd agree. I think you got if I remember correctly, it switched directors like right before the filming, and that was like a big controversy because then it went to Ron Howard, which in my opinion, Ron Howard is a great director.
Right.
I love Apollo 13. So, and I don't think he did any injustice towards this movie. I think the movie plays. I would like to watch it again and just kind of see how it goes without all the criticism that was going around it at the time. So, yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, that would be my number one. The dude getting choked out by Vader.
Oh. All right. Jamie, who was going to join us but had run out, he did send me his top 5, so I'll just go through those really quick.
Cool.
For 5, he had Porkins, who was
Porkins. Who's
he was
Porkins?
one of the X-wing pilots that gets shot down early in the Death Star run.
Gotcha.
Red Leader, which
I was gonna say. Wait. Well, I was gonna say, isn't there several like Red 2? Like
Red Leader, same. I thought
like
Wedge was Red Leader. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm really getting my Star Wars card pulled right now.
I was gonna say, we'll have to do during the fact check. We'll go back to this.
We'll do some housekeeping on next episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 3, he had Jawas. Number 2, he had Moff Tarkin, and number 1, he had Wedge. So, yeah, I totally forgot about Wedge too. Yeah. All right. And that concludes this episode of Movie Time Machine. Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.